We're getting close to it being 7 years since Final Fantasy VII Remake released, and my opinion on the new Final Fantasy VII trilogy has changed a little.
Say what?
Looking again at the story, changes I liked and didn't like. I'll rank my favourite musical moments, one thing I'd change about the combat, how characters have been extended upon, all that and more.
Let's get this over with.
The original Final Fantasy VII is my favourite game of all time, and I still really like Remake. It hits all the major story beats, and some of its new additions are genuinely fantastic. I absolutely love the chapter where you spend time topside with Biggs, Jesse, and Wedge. Knowing what was coming was soul crushing.
Together, we can take on the world!
But I still think the game's biggest flaw is how much it pads out the Midgar section. Some of the extra content works, but a lot of it hurts the pacing.
That's true.
When I was younger, I'd imagine what a futuristic Final Fantasy VII Remake would look like. My childhood imagination had us exploring brand new sectors of Midgar we'd never seen before. Instead, we ended up spending even more time in the sewers for 2 chapters.
You want us to go back into the sewers with you?
The other major change was the introduction of these ghost-like creatures called the Whispers. My opinion on them has been all over the place. First time I saw them, I had no idea what they weren't in the original game, so just based on that fact, I initially hated them.
Oh great, these assholes again!
To explain why my opinion keeps changing, we need to talk about Sephiroth. Basically, Sephiroth enters Remake's story much earlier than he should. On one hand, that disrupts the pacing, we're not getting the build up to this villain, and it undermines Shinra, who should be the main antagonist throughout the Midgar section. At first, none of it even made sense. In the original, the reunion doesn't trigger until Cloud reaches Jenova in the Shinra building, which makes Sephiroth's much earlier appearance in the remake feel unusual.
You're damn right!
But then I started noticing something strange. This Sephiroth knows things he shouldn't. He talks as if he's already lived through the events of the original Final Fantasy VII, and even the follow-up movie, Advent Children. It's almost as if this is the Sephiroth from the original timeline, or at least he has those memories. His goal is to change the timeline so he wins this time. And when this clicked, it blew me away. Now, that's where the Whispers come in. Their purpose is to force events back onto the proper timeline whenever something starts to change. They're basically on my side. They want the story to stay faithful to the original Final Fantasy VII. And once I understood that, I was actually on board with the idea. It's a clever meta concept. The Whispers allow the game to explore these what-if scenarios without completely rewriting the story. What if Wedge survived his fall from the pillar?
Hey guys, long time no see!
What if we reach President Shinra before he's been murdered this time? What if Hojo figured out the truth far earlier than he should have?
My boy, you weren't a soldier.
Every time the story starts to drift away from the original, the Whispers appear and force things back onto the proper path they're meant to follow.
What? What is this fascinating phenomenon? What's happening?
The problem is that they're everywhere. They flood the screen, interrupt emotional scenes, and end up drawing attention away from some of the game's biggest moments. Honestly, I kinda wish the Whispers were invisible. Keep the idea exactly the same, just don't have these giant swarms of ghosts taking over every important scene. So at this point, I actually liked the idea behind the Whispers, but then Rebirth took things a step further, by going deeper into a multiverse with multiple versions of reality and different versions of characters.
Oh, hell no!
I'll save my full thoughts on Rebirth for when I revisit that game, but personally, I don't think Final Fantasy VII needed multiverse storytelling. The original was already a complex but brilliantly told story. It had mystery, twists, and themes that people are still discussing decades later. Adding multiple realities and alternative versions of characters doesn't enhance that story for me. It feels confusing, less focused, and I care less about the characters when there's multiple versions of them.
Yeah, I think I'm good with just one Cloud.
The one and only.
So while I like the idea of the Whispers in Final Fantasy VII Remake, I don't like where they ultimately led. The concept was interesting, but the direction it took in the next game is where I started to lose interest. So overall, I'm against the Whispers, but I can be more positive about them in the single context of Part 1, Remake.
Great!
Before we get into the next part of Final Fantasy VII Remake, quick pause. If you love RPGs, consider subscribing to Bytes or giving the video a like. I'm a bit of an indie game developer who covers RPGs, and I'm replaying the whole Final Fantasy series while ranking them. Thank you.
Right, off we go.
So yeah, I spoke a lot about Whispers, but let's get back to Final Fantasy VII Remake, because despite everything, I still really like this game. The music completely blew me away several times, the soundtrack as a whole is absolutely incredible, and it's easily one of my favourite game soundtracks.
So good.
Just for fun, I want to rank my top 3 musical moments from Remake. Coming in at number 3 is Midnight Rendezvous. This is one of the new tracks introduced in Remake, and I absolutely love it. It's such a chill, heartfelt and atmospheric moment while you're navigating between sectors with Aerith. It perfectly captures that nighttime, quieter side of Midgar that we didn't explore much of in the original. At number 2 is Smash 'em Rip 'em, which plays while you're storming Don Corneo's mansion with Tifa and Aerith. It's completely different in tone, but it's so much fun. It's a remix of Tifa's theme, but it has so much energy and personality, and it makes the entire sequence feel unforgettable. And my favourite musical moment has to be inside the Genova Dreamweaver fight. The fight itself is already really cool, mowing through her tentacles, but when Genova enters her third and final phase, the music transitions into this incredible remix of the classic Genova theme.
Bring it on. That's it.
It's so good, it feels like the entire battle is just building towards this one moment. And when the final phase begins, it just blew my socks off. It's sick as hell. Even if we didn't fight Genova here in the original, it's a welcome moment.
Nailed it in one.
I will say, even though Final Fantasy VII Remake isn't a current generation game anymore, it still looks absolutely gorgeous. Maybe the occasional lighting issues with the Unreal Engine. The opening chapters in particular are incredible. Seeing Upper Midgar brought to life with this level of detail is still genuinely jaw-dropping. The new street views, the scale of the reactors, and all the little details added to the environment make it feel like a living, breathing city.
Satisfied?
On the technical side, replaying it reminded me of one of the biggest limitations of the original PS4 version, the amount of slow walking sections. There are so many moments where you have to squeeze through gaps, shuffle along narrow paths, or follow these long winding routes. They feel like hidden loading screens, and while they're definitely better than staring at a loading screen, it's still a reminder that the game was built around the limitations of older hardware.
Right.
There's only one visual issue that stands out to me, it's the Midgar skybox. Even when the game released, the skybox looked strangely low quality compared to the rest of the game. You got these incredible detailed 3D environments, and then you look up and see this low quality background that feels out of place. And sure, you could say just don't look at it, but the game literally dedicates an entire chapter to exploring the underplate, where you're focused in on Midgar's skybox.
That the Sector 4 slums down there?
Getting to experience the big spectacle moments from Final Fantasy VII in modern visuals completely blew me away. The bombing missions, fighting the airbuster, and hearing the full version of the boss theme for the first time felt incredible.
Are you alright?
I'm fine. You guys good to go?
As good as I'll ever be.
Then you got the fall of Sector 7. It's not quite as devastating in Remake because the game gives you time to evacuate the sector beforehand, but as a trade-off, we get this incredible set piece with Reno and Rude that gives the whole sequence a completely different kind of impact. And storming and escaping the Shinra building was another huge highlight, especially because it was one of those moments I was really looking forward to. It completely blew me away nearly 30 years ago. There are also lots of smaller changes that I really appreciate, things like the new boss encounters with Reno, Rude, and Genova.
Don't take it personal.
As well as the optional arena fights, they add more gameplay without changing the core story in a negative way. Of course, there's also changes I don't love, and most of them come down to the same thing, padding and filler that wasn't in the original game. But one thing I really appreciate is how, even when Remake removes or changes smaller things from the original, it sometimes finds clever ways to reference them. For example, instead of the original game sections where you sneak past guards and hide behind pillars, Remake recreates that idea with the Valkyrie fight, where you're literally using pillars as cover. There's also a moment in the original where you swing across a part of the ruins and time your jump to progress. In Remake, Tifa instead has a moment in the Shinra building where she swings across hanging lights, which immediately reminded me of that little section. There's loads of little moments and nods like this throughout the game that longtime fans will pick up on, and I really appreciate that. Even if Remake can't recreate every scene or moment, they can still try to sneak in references.
Right.
One of the things I think Final Fantasy VII Remake does really well is the combat. Now, in a perfect world, I would have kept Final Fantasy VII turn-based, but that's not what we got. I do actually really enjoy the action RPG combat they created here. Cloud especially feels great to play. I love the way you can counterattack with his Punisher stance, and there's a real sense of skill and mastery in switching between his different stances at the right time. Feels really slick chopping people up.
Open up the throttle. Oh, that's the stuff. What's more?
I think it's really cool how we slow down time to go into menus and use our ATB bars to use abilities, spells, and items. Very light pseudo turn-based element.
No escape.
Go on!
I think it's even cooler how we summon in Remake. Summons actually fight on the battlefield, you can direct them, and their ultimate moves are sick as hell. The one area where combat feels awkward is aerial enemies. Fighting in the air as a melee character just doesn't feel great, and thankfully that's something Rebirth improves massively. At least in Remake, you can usually swap to a ranged character for those situations, assuming they're available.
That's how it's done.
A big part of why I enjoy the combat is the depth behind it. It still keeps a lot of the systems that made the original Final Fantasy VII so interesting. Enemies have elemental affinities, materia is still the heart of character customization. For example, I like setting up Barret as a ranged tank. You can take a beating, draw enemies' attention, and support the rest of the party from a distance.
Yeah.
Then you've got Aerith, who I build as my main magic user. She can support the team and absolutely destroy enemies with powerful duplicate spells.
Huh?
Even small quality of life changes make a big difference. One thing I love is how materia slots light up when you've successfully created a linked combination. In the original game, it wasn't always obvious when your materia was actually compatible with each other, so this simple change makes experimenting with builds much easier. If I could change one thing about the combat though, it would be the way hard mode works. You can't start the game on hard mode, you have to beat the game first, then replay it through New Game Plus with all your upgraded equipment and abilities. And when I come back to replay a game like this, I don't really want to finish a full RPG just to start playing it the way I actually want to. And even then it's more like New Game Plus with everything unlocked. The way it's designed hurts the game's replayability in the long run.
You're kidding me.
The game already offers easier difficulty and various accessibility boosts from the start for one side of the spectrum that want an easy game. I don't see why there couldn't be a hard mode designed around the first playthrough for players who want that extra challenge from the start. I've heard the third part with Final Fantasy VII Revelations will be changing how hard mode works, so looking forward to trying that.
Alright, good enough.
And speaking of those boosts and advantages, the pre-order bonuses are another thing I'm not a huge fan of. There are multiple summon materia available as bonuses, and while I believe these are now available to everyone, I still think it's a missed opportunity. I would have much rather discovered these summons naturally throughout the game, something like the Chocobo summon where you have to find it hidden away in Midgar's ventilation system, and you have to fight through a small challenge to earn it. Finding materia through exploration and challenges is always more satisfying than simply being handed it as a pre-order bonus. Those moments of discovery are just one of the many things that made Final Fantasy VII special.
This is summoning material.
I want to talk about the characters because I genuinely like how much they've expanded them in Remake. There is one character I don't entirely agree with though, but I'll run through them one by one. I think Barret was always a well-written character, but I love just how much more banter he has in the new Final Fantasy VII.
Hell yeah, baby!
I was so gutted when I heard that Red 13 wouldn't be playable in Remake, but he does fight alongside the party, which is still pretty cool. I think the devs have done a great job capturing his personality and the way he speaks, but was keeping him a guest character the right decision?
A fascinating question.
I think they've expanded Tifa really well too, especially with her guilt over Avalanche's reactor bombings that'll pay off later down the line.
I feel trapped.
I love how much more time we get with Biggs, Jessie and Wedge. Like I said earlier, I think the trip topside with these three is the single best addition in Remake. It gives you far more time to connect with them before they meet their end. They all have so much more personality this time round, and I love just how thirsty Jessie is.
There's such a thing as playing too hard to get.
Without saying too much, I also think they've done a fantastic job capturing Cloud's awkwardness. He has all these socially awkward interactions with different characters, and they absolutely nailed that side of him.
What are you, 20-something?
First.
Huh?
Soldier first class. Doesn't go into the 20s.
The hell you talking about? I mean your age, not your goddamn rank.
The one character I have mixed feelings about is Aerith. It all comes back to the Whispers. Like Sephiroth, she seems to have knowledge of future events, almost as if she's carrying the memories of an Aerith who's already lived through the original Final Fantasy VII.
Could be.
Because of that, she sometimes blurts out things she shouldn't know or reacts to events in ways that feel oddly detached from the moment. For me, that changes the way her character comes across. Instead of feeling like the Aerith I remember from the original game, she occasionally feels more like a secret time traveler who's already seen how everything plays out. It's one of the few additions in Remake that doesn't quite work for me.
He's my bodyguard. And a soldier. Pretty cool, huh?
Huh?
I guessed. From the sword.
Going into Remake, I was worried that some things would be censored. After all, we literally cross-dressed to break into a pimp's mansion, so I'm glad that section actually made it into the game.
Nailed it, I know, thank you. Moving on.
Some parts of the Honeybee Inn are toned down, but it still gets the job done. And while we're on that section, I'm probably going to get crucified for saying this, but I'm just not a song and dance guy.
You serious?
I think the new Honeybee Inn performance has a really positive message behind it, and even though it never happened in the original, I can absolutely believe Cloud would reluctantly go along with it to save Tifa. But I don't think he'd automatically be a good dancer. But I've never really enjoyed big dance moments, whether it's Disney films, certain Kingdom Hearts worlds, or anything else. They just don't do much for me.
I don't dance.
I actually prefer how Final Fantasy VIII handles its dance scene. Squall is even more reluctant, awkward, and spends half the time trying to escape the dance. I can relate with Squall in the moment. Speaking of censorship though, there is one change that disappoints me. In the original game, when you're following Sephiroth and Jenova's trail through Shinra HQ, there's blood everywhere. I always interpreted it as the blood of everyone who got in Sephiroth's way. It's a genuinely haunting scene, and the bloody atmosphere helps build suspense until you finally discover President Shinra's body. In Remake, that blood is replaced with a strange purple trail linked to Jenova instead. Maybe it's geostigma that's from the extended lore. Either way, this purple goo just doesn't have the same impact for me, and it feels like the scene was toned down to fit a modern age rating.
Oh, you gotta be shitting me.
Personally, I think they should have leaned into the horror of the original, even if that meant giving the game a more mature rating like Final Fantasy XVI.
You're right.
All in all though, there really isn't that much censorship in Remake. My much bigger issues with censorship actually come in Rebirth, so you can look forward to hearing about those. So when it comes to ranking Final Fantasy VII Remake, I think there are absolutely plenty of S-tier moments. The opening, the airbuster fight, the plate falling, storming and escaping the Shinra building. There are so many incredible moments throughout the game. But overall, I'm leaning more towards an A rank, maybe even a A+. I think Remake is an excellent game, but I do think the original handled this section so much better. After replaying it so many times, the slower moments and pacing issues have become much more noticeable. The original Midgar section was only a few hours long, and here it's been expanded into an entire game. When I replayed these games back to back, I realised that some of the chapters in Remake are hours of gameplay and cutscenes, while those same sections in the original can be over in less than a minute. And on one hand, I do appreciate what they've added. We get more character development, more world building, and more time with these characters. But on the other hand, it does disrupt the pacing of the original, and some of these extended sections feel more like padding rather than meaningful additions. That said, I absolutely love the completely new chapter where you go topside with Biggs, Jesse, and Wedge. That is exactly the kind of expansion of the original I wanted to see. I can definitely understand the argument that Final Fantasy VII shouldn't have been split up into 3 separate games. I agree, honestly even just splitting it into 2 parts instead could have helped with the pacing issues, but that's a discussion for another time. I've got other videos to work on, but in a few weeks I'll be going through Final Fantasy VII Remake chapter by chapter. I'll be looking at my favourite thing Remake does better in each section, but also my favourite thing the original did better. So we'll be talking a lot more about Remake then. In the meantime, check out my Return to Dark Cloud, a very cool game, or my video ranking my favourite summon in every Final Fantasy. Have a good one.